So,
I'm Raywin Pickering,
hi.
a farmer who does comedy.
I'm Adrian Pickering. I'm an Australian actor. And yes, we're sisters.
So sisters, I love how you always say
God.
Australian actor. Like, yeah,
Sorry,
we can
I
tell.
say, well, don't you say, oh, yeah, that's true. I guess I'm so connected
okay.
to my nationality
Yeah.
somehow.
So proud.
It's a really,
so
like,
proud.
subconscious connection. You're right. I'm just an actor. That's it. I'm just an actor, full
It's
stop.
that's it.
I'm Adrian Pickering, actor.
Actor.
And
yeah.
yes.
So we're both.
What nationality?
Yeah. What do you connect with?
Gosh.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, we're sisters. We're both
Yes.
creative artists, artists, working, carving out like an existence in Australia. And so we like to talk to other creative people that are trying to figure out,
How to do it too.
how the heck do you do it?
How do you do it, Rowan?
I don't know. I do it with a lot of stress and a day job that actually pays my rent. But
is important too.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, there's kind of something about it. So we want to talk to, who do we want to talk to? Like
Writers, actors,
artists, documentary
designers, documentary makers, directors, singers, songwriters.
musicians, anyone that's like
comedians.
trying to comedians, even them.
People forging out some kind of career, some kind of living.
So,
and
because we want to know how and why they do it, all these people, is this a job?
wait, is this a job?
Is it?
Raven, maybe we got a job.
Okay. Well,
I was going to ask what's going on at the farm first.
let's go to the farm. Okay. We did tagging of the sheep yesterday. Yep.
Big day.
Big day. Big day. They got their numbers. They'll stay with them for life.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep. We
not a
haven't
lot.
picked out the ones that we think we want to keep for breeding purposes.
Gosh, brutal. They don't know. They don't know if they're being gifted.
Well, you don't know how nice they are.
you
Some
tell
of them
them?
might be jerks. So,
That's true.
yeah, you don't want to keep them.
I think it's beef. Turkey.
Lamb. But no, these are probably going to be pets where we, well, go to any avenue, but they're so humanized that they often find very good homes as pets. But often they
Make
go
beautiful
to,
pets.
often
Don't mention it.
beautiful
Where
lamb.
Oh, God, don't mention it. Oh, listening.
Anyway, yeah, so that's what I've done. And then, a semi-good comedy week because last week I had a bunch of gigs like cancel. It's just that weird time where people aren't really going out and there's no
Not
audience,
quite
so you
summer
can't really do
yet.
comedy. But I did 3 gigs last night and so that was good.
Whoa, 3?
Yeah.
One night.
Yeah, you got to. Bombed the first time, but then by the end of it, the bit was working. By the end of like the
Isn't that
the
what
third
you guys
one.
say? Bomb or crush?
Yeah.
Is there anything in
Yeah.
between? Nope.
Nah, boring.
I think you should remember that not everyone always laughs and they still really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think you only.
Oh yeah, I think
know how
that's
you
what
used
you
to
maybe
only
have to
write down the
learn.
laughs?
Being self-aware of like, well, are you actually like being
smiling on the
interesting?
inside.
Are you
What
actually
if-
being interested? Like, what
Yes.
kind of silence is this? Is this the tension or like a listening? I don't know. I guess you kind of try to work it out. But
They're laughing
anyway, yeah.
internally sometimes.
yeah. How about your week?
Pretty good
Creative
week.
endeavors, tagging.
Yeah, look, no tagging for me. No tagging. A couple of bread tags in there maybe, but like, just accidental.
The sangers.
You find them everywhere, don't you? Like on the benches. I'm always finding
the
bread
drawers.
tags in our house. Yeah, weird. Look, I feel pretty lucky this week, and I think
Whoa.
I know, whoa, jackpot.
Yeah.
I think it's due to a bit of balance, you know.
Oh,
A couple of work things.
that's good.
Feeling pretty good about life, you know.
Wow. So
Yeah.
good week.
I don't know, good week, I think.
1 out of
Feels pretty
52
good.
isn't bad.
Riding
Woohoo!
high.
Well, anyway, let's get to our lovely guest.
It's going to be really exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
We've got a friend of mine, an old friend who I haven't seen in a while, Jolyon
pretty
James. He's not very old, but our friendship started.
Has lasted.
I think I'm
through
old
time.
and we have an old friendship.
You're both, yes.
Wow.
Both can coexist.
That's lovely.
In this world.
So, Jolyon, May I call you Jolyon?
Of course.
Or Mr. James.
If that is your name.
Like, what do you put? So the first question that we asked is like, what do you put? Obviously, being a creative person, it's really hard to answer those forms, the government forms that are like, okay, you have to pigeonhole yourself, choose from the drop down in the census. What do you say you are?
What do you say your occupation is?
I do say artist,
Do
but
you?
it took me a long
Just
time
artist.
to do it.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that's often one of the generic terms that's just there, isn't it? Artist. But actually, artist fits you pretty well because you actually do literally make art quite a lot of the time. And you're also writer, director, visual
Designer,
artist,
visual artist,
photographer,
Whoa.
animator.
Yeah.
There's a lot of animation in that last show.
Yeah,
Did you do all of that?
I did, yeah.
You did an animation. Whoa, cool.
So you wear like so many different creative hats.
Yeah.
And hats look terrible on me. So I don't,
Especially the animated ones. I wish you'd make it 3D.
They're always like cat ears or something.
Yeah. Whoa. So many things, but how did you start? What was the first like creative kind of thing that you were like,
Wow.
yeah, let's do this with my life?
Well, look, I think
mean, that's a big
I come
question.
from, I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh, yeah.
So you get to do anything you want, really.
Parents have checked
Everyone's
out.
too busy.
like the
Yeah.
elder ones have just kind of broken everything. And,
Oh yeah. Or like, did they actually like fulfill your parents' dreams of being like a doctor and like whatever?
No,
So
every single one artist.
Really?
We all put artists on our forms.
Oh,
and
that's so
My mum
interesting.
was a professional artist, painter,
Oh
textiles
wow.
artist. And
Oh,
Dad,
so you just grew up with it and knowing that
Yeah.
it could be a job as well.
Yeah, we certainly knew that. But also, I think it's interesting. Mum, as a professional artist, intuitively, she's a great teacher and stuff as well. And I think, when all my siblings went off to school, I had this amazing couple of years with her on my own.
Yes,
And because she was
the
working.
youngest.
Yeah. And then I would make art next to her. And I thought what I was doing was exactly the same, literally the same. And she never told me it wasn't. So I think my skill level and my cognitive level are always aligned. Sometimes I can get out of whack and you stop drawing when you're 12 and you're 25 and you pick up a pencil and you say, I can't draw. But the reality is you're still drawing like a 12-year-old because that's when you stop practicing.
Yes.
I was lucky enough to keep them in parallel.
Wow.
And that judgment like never set in. And,
No.
And also it was cool and it was just what you did. It sounds like it was just
Yeah.
like part of your life.
That's right. You get that thing that you're good at and at school
Yeah.
you're the artist or you're the drawer or whatever.
Yes.
And I remember doing,
cool.
being obsessed with, I would take those house and garden magazines and the beautiful chrome taps with water and everything, and I would meticulously copy them in pencil. And I think that was my kind of basic training for drawing because
Yeah.
I'd love this kind of shiny looking stuff. I did so many things like that.
That must build like real skills as as a drawer, as an illustrator.
Yeah.
I guess.
And that's the
like
thing.
to
I mean,
really
being-
accurately.
Being able to draw doesn't make you an artist. It's just a skill you learn. Being an artist is how you see the world, and that comes way later. I don't think I called myself an artist until I was 30,
Yeah. Yeah.
despite making lots of art prior. I do remember having a bit of a revelation where I was 20, just turning 21, and I was finishing my first degree, and everyone was saying, well, what are you going to do? You've got to specialise, and I was doing all the things that I just love to do. And
Wait, what was your degree?
Like a visual arts
so
degree
I
or
did
something.
fine arts and a Bachelor of Education. So my mum, who's an artist, said, I want to do fine art. She said, well, you have to do a teaching degree.
Yeah.
Which was, in hindsight, a bit rude because she was an artist.
And not a teacher. So
Yeah, but, you've got to do that thing to fall back
yeah. Yeah. She knew. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
can't do, teach.
on. That's right.
What a terrible
But they say,
saying.
Oh, that's what people say.
I know. Some people say it.
We come from
No
a
one should
family
ever
of
say it,
teachers.
though. We come from a family of teachers. Maybe that's why I'm really opposed to being a teacher sometimes.
Well, it is interesting because I say, something to fall back on, and I don't think teaching is something you should do falling backwards. It's not.
No.
Not
Oh my
recommended.
God.
But I did do it because, I listened to my mum, but I did visual arts as well. And then I discovered theatre when I was at uni and kind of went headlong into that and did all sorts of stuff. And then went to WAPA to train. I trained as an actor, but I actually intrinsically understood that I wanted to direct. I thought I better find out what actors do. So maybe if I learn to be an actor, I might be a director. And
So
it
you
took me
did
like,
have an inkling
cool.
pretty early on.
Yeah.
that
But
directing.
So there wasn't that pathway to being a director? Like there wasn't something
really.
that you could... Oh, wow. That's kind of interesting.
Not in Perth anyway. There's not much of an industry
Yeah.
in Perth. But anyway, I had all this pressure to say, what are you going to do? What are you going to be? And then I did have this very clear revelation that all the things I did, I'd learnt. So there weren't things I was born with. I wasn't born with the ability to draw or sing or whatever all those things are. I'd learnt them. The one thing I was doing was being creative.
Yeah.
So suddenly went, I'm only doing one thing. I happened to learn a whole lot of skills that kind of manifest that creative urge.
Yeah.
And because I'm curious and, I get bored easily, so I learn all these different things. So suddenly I just went, I'm only doing one thing already.
Yeah.
And that was such a relief to go, I'm just a creative person in the world. I can experience the world creatively and I can draw down these skills whenever I need them to apply to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
And suddenly I just went, I don't have to choose. So I didn't.
Wow.
And that's kind of what happened.
How liberating and like such an organic way of discovering, I think, what a lot of actors or writers or comedians sort of find over time is you have to cobble together a lot of different ways or diversify and a lot of different fingers in pies all the time.
Yeah.
But it kind of sounds so like
Which can be hard.
wholesome.
Yeah.
Your way of doing it sounds much less
your way
painful.
seems like very like, I don't know. I think there's maybe a thing of like, you're not doing the thing that you set out to do, so you're pivoting. Like maybe that's like what people are
pivot
like.
is the new thing. But I think I look the curiosity around stuff. I know that for me, being creative is a really therapeutic thing. I try to be a really consistent person in the world, whoever I relate to. I try and be the same person. And I feel like whenever I reach that thing where I'm feeling the pressure, whether externally, internally, things materialize in my hands. So I'll start making something or writing something or building something. And by no coincidence, the thing that I'm doing happens to take the perfect amount of time for me to resolve the stuff that's going on in my head. And then I finish and I've made a little cardboard car, whatever it is. And then suddenly it's like, I've got it out of my head, into my hands, and then it's away. And I feel better. And I feel like I'm able to kind of be consistent in the world that way. And if I didn't have that, I think I'd be kind of up and down all the time and be buffeted by all these external things. But I think knowing intrinsically how good it was for me, I don't think there was ever any other option, really.
Do you feel like you were encouraged by what you spoke about your mum, sort of to channel your energy into the art, or do you think it was something that was
Not
just
overtly.
like within you that, and you sort of had the art at hand and had that encouragement, and it just happened that way?
I in hindsight, my mum passed away now, but I think I don't see that overt thing from my parents channeling me in that direction. If anything, it was the opposite to, do something safer or whatever. But just observing it in practice, and here my dad was at home with me. He's an incredible craftsman. He was a farmer as well and came off the farm, and he makes spinning wheels and, taught us to spin and crochet and knit and all the things. And so I learned all those things from my dad, and he's this big burly farmer, and seeing mum work, practice every day. I mean, it's unavoidable for a young person to go, well, that looks pretty nice. And my parents are here and I've got a beautiful relationship with them. So kind of it would be harder to deviate into something else, I think.
For sure. It seems like, it
really
would be
go down that
unnatural to then be like, I don't know, like an accountant or something, like a lawyer, something very like numbers and like in an office when you're growing up like that. And
But I love science, and I also, and I could have easily done that. And when I went through school, it was either way. I could have gone down that path as well. And, happened to go down this path, which I feel very, very blessed by. Like I've had a really lovely, fortunate life.
A lot of the work you do is self-created and self-driven. So do you sort of discipline yourself to kind of work on one, do you have to, I wonder if, because you've got so many different interests, if you're like, is it hard to really focus on one thing and like, I've just got to finish this script and I've just got to finish writing the story? Or do you find you can just sort of like balance making different things at different times, and how do you do that? You must have a lot of stuff going on in your creative world.
Yeah.
How do you
I think
finish
going back to
anything?
that-
I guess is my point. Like, how do you have enough like stamina?
Yeah, is your shed
like
just
stamina-
full of like unfinished projects,
Yeah,
and you're
and
like,
a lot of 70s and 80s furniture that I'm obsessed with.
and I'll
But,
get
you
to
know, there's
reupholstering one
I
day.
guess like there's only an infinite amount of time, and there's a lot of boring stuff that needs to happen too, just to bring, say, a play to fruition and all of that. So how do you manage
Well, I think
that part of
going back to that thing, I don't think there's ever one thing. So
Yeah.
whatever I happen to be doing arrives in the work that I'm making, everything. And that's not just from an artistic perspective, it's from a family perspective, it's from a living perspective, because I think certainly every work that I make is autobiographical, because you can only draw on the things you know.
Yeah.
Now, I remember a whole lot of year 12 students asking about, what advice do you give to being an artist or whatever? And I said, well, only write things you know, only make things that you know, but know a lot, and I think that's what it is. So no, I don't find that hard. I don't find there's a discipline for one thing. I realise that if I'm making something over here, invariably some element of it is going to appear in the play. Or an idea or a process or something, it may literally appear in a play. You just saw Imagine, which was the Alison Lester
yes.
adaptation.
So talk about that, maybe. Yeah.
Well, there's a beautiful little piece inside of that I wrote for my son when we moved to the Mornington Peninsula, and we live near the back beach, and it's this wild, wild place, and it's unlike anything. It feels kind of primordial in a way. And I wrote this little poem for him because when we walk down on the back beach, it's like these things have just petrified when you look at them, but if you look away, they're transforming into animals, and and they're just in your periphery all the time.
Yeah.
Those rock shapes. And,
That's right.
Yeah.
And then I'm talking about
Driftwood.
this idea in Imagine, which is also about transformation and taking objects to become other things. And I went, oh, this beautiful back beach poem is perfect for this. So I took half of that poem and literally put it into the play.
Yeah.
So they're not separate to me. The play is one iteration of it, but there are many, and it could transform and change over time. So I've never struggled with that. I just have deep trust, I think, in the creative process that whatever I'm doing relates to the thing that I'm doing.
Such deep trust. So fascinated by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, or something, or stupidity or something.
Yeah,
just
you feel like such a
just real focus.
Yeah.
I think
And I'm never not doing it. Like I never stop, even in my sleep. I sleep with headphones on. I never,
and like toothpicks holding your eyes
Yeah.
open.
kind of, I do.
Pens in your hands.
Yeah.
So you can still write the ideas down.
It's just the sound of your own voice in
Yeah,
the headphones.
sounds really
you can
wholesome,
do it.
Joel.
You can do it. You can do it.
The Homer Simpson.
yeah.
Wake up really smart. But, recently, like my eldest son is autistic, and through his diagnosis, so it's very clear to me that I would be exactly the same as him, and ADHD as well.
Yeah.
And so...
like in how you interpret the world and like...
Yeah.
Ah.
Like I did the adult test for autism, and I was going to get a diagnosis at some stage as a way of supporting him through his understanding of himself. Turns out he doesn't need it at all, but he's doing very well. But, and I did the 50 questionnaire or whatever. I think I scored 37 or something, and my beautiful Zen
that's a
nurse
pass, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a high pass. I think what's considered to be in the middle of the bell curve is like 8 or 9 or something.
Oh,
Really?
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
sound like the middle. Right.
Like,
I mean, in terms of- no, I mean,
I'm not very good at
13.
maths anymore. But don't quote me on that.
yeah.
So there's that too. So
Yeah.
I think, part of my process is driven by a deep, neurological process that
Yeah.
for most of my life I was completely unaware of.
Yeah.
And now was kind of blindsided by a little bit when I went through this process with my son.
A
and just
totally
went,
different way of sort of
I feel like-
thinking about it, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because, that, of course, wasn't around when
No.
we were growing up.
That's right. And
Right.
being the youngest of 4, and I was really looked after by my siblings and my parents. And I think my mum intrinsically,
Yeah.
parented me in the way that
You really
and-
nurtured what you needed.
enabled me to navigate through all that sort of stuff. Although, you know, I do look back in my life and go, oh, it's so embarrassing. The number of things I've misinterpreted or just didn't understand or whatever, you know, and you have individual stories about each one, and then you realise, oh, there's actually one answer that really makes sense. It's like, oh, yeah. So, to answer the question, it's not to say that I don't find things hard. Things are hard, you know, and deadlines are hard and volume is hard and managing people. It's hard, but hard in a in a good way. But the creative process itself is just something that, I don't know, for whatever reason, is just always on in me.
Was there ever a moment where you're like, I don't think this is the career for me. I don't think I can do this.
Yes.
This is like too hard.
Yes, weirdly, and I think it relates to that last thing we were just talking about. I remember describing in my 20s, I described myself like a kind of Fabergé egg, because I love learning stuff and I was good at learning things. And and I think my ADHD thing, you know, I'd really master skills, but I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel anything. I didn't know what it was connected to. So I felt like I could dazzle people into thinking I was good at stuff, but inside I was going,
what does it all mean?
Don't feel anything.
Where do I belong?
So you didn't feel like a sense of
Felt like a
achievement or
trick.
like all right.
And then I went through a massive breakup in my early 30s that I think broke my brain.
Whoa.
And I suddenly went, oh, I feel things now. And it kind of unlocked feeling, and I just cried ads. So I feel like...
Having kids will do that too,
Yeah,
I think.
kids also.
I do need life insurance.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, when I put on my form artist, happened in my 30s, because suddenly the thing that I was practicing for had something to inhabit.
It's interesting, isn't it, how I guess maybe it's all jobs, but how artists are really influenced by what's going on in our lives, because that creation and that like seed of an idea or something, it needs to come from quite a humble place, which is often in the dark within us or something. And so it is often some of the hardest times in our life that some really great works of art can come out of.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
For me,
and we feel like we're broken, but actually you're almost at your creative
But when
best.
you're doing it, it can be so hard to
It's
see
like
the
on
end.
the edge. You're on the edge of actually a real breakthrough.
I know. I suppose I understand that, and you do know that paradigm of the artist who's broken, and you know that is a thing. I think for me, it kind of goes even a step further back. Is that I don't know why I can compartmentalize what I do and what I think. So I almost can shut off my kind of critical thinking about what I'm doing, and it's not until after go, oh, that was very exposing, this thing that I made.
I can't believe I did that.
How embarrassing.
And that enables me to just I made a show about my son's diagnosis. Wasn't really, it appears to be about a child who's autistic and has this terrible experience, true experience that happened with our friends. But in hindsight, coming out of it, I made this thing and I thought it was all about that. And then, of course, it's actually about parenting, and it's all about me. And if I'd known it was about me, I wouldn't have made it. It was so exposing. So I don't have the kind of trauma response to make art. I almost like divert it before it gets there.
The trauma comes after the art.
The trauma comes after, but at a safe distance. You know? It's
Well,
like
and being a
away from-
director, it can be at a safe distance.
That's right.
Like
Yeah.
if you were getting up there and doing a one-man show,
Oh, that's right.
could you? Like that would be terribly confronting, wouldn't it? Because it would be, yes, both the creating and have to saying, you know, experiencing that very vulnerable thing in real time.
Yeah, it's certainly not a show I would go to watch.
It's not something you've attempted to do
I
yet.
wouldn't go and see it.
I feel like you should make art you want to see.
Yeah, I've always said, I mean,
But someone
maybe
wants to
not.
see.
when we talk about stress, about making work, the hardest thing is that notion of going, is this my best? Is this my best I can do? It doesn't matter who the audience is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if there's
That's
anything, is that I don't think I'll ever have made the best version of it. But at some point you go, in this time, this is the best version of it for this moment, and the next time it might be changed or adjusted or something. That's the hard bit, really.
Yeah. Do you find it more rewarding, like making those things for kids? Because that's quite different.
Yeah,
other
rewarding's not the right term, but the audience doesn't have any baggage about what art is meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, kids don't differentiate between their devices, which is why we had giant phones on the stage. You know, that's a big part of their play space.
Oh, right.
Yes.
You know, or what's YouTube or someone in front of them. They don't have that kind of hierarchy
There's
of
no
what's
filter either, is there? Like, so the response is immediate
That's
and
right.
very pure,
But everything's up for grabs. So, you know, in the show, I've got these giant phones because the idea is let's go to where their eyes are. Let's take them somewhere that they couldn't possibly imagine and then kind of deliver them safely home. That's kind of the arc of the show. So, yeah, you know, I think the hard bit is knowing when something's complete, and I think deep down I know nothing's really complete until you can't do it anymore.
Oh.
Do you
that's
find
death.
that it gets
I've got from
The
children
ultimate
theatre
end.
to death.
to death
Yeah.
in one sentence?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, that's pretty much how we feel about our careers.
As long as they're not happening at the same time.
Yeah. Well, they do call it dying on stage for a reason, you know. Hey.
So I think, I've got comfortable at being uncomfortable. I think I've got comfortable at not knowing stuff and because I have no
That's
experience
the
of it
biggest
not
thing.
working.
Yeah.
But that's like you getting out there
Yeah.
and doing a gig
Yeah.
and sort of going
I was
like,
gonna
in
say,
some ways,
that's
I
the
hope it gets
biggest
cancelled,
thing of
but it's
being-
not
Yeah.
like now my name's on it, I have to do it. And then
Yeah,
you
to
do
get
it,
out.
you know,
Yeah.
it's sort of like you're on the precipice and sometimes you just need to like,
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, totally. And it's like you are kind of driven by fear, but that helps make it better. And like, by pushing yourself to actually go out there and then you get better and
try
better
the
and
new-
better and
the new
trying the
thing.
new stuff that's
You know,
like
which-
more rewarding and like, different. But it's still, I don't know. I guess it's like, as you say, it's something you have to learn to just be okay with it not going or learn that it's okay if it doesn't go well. Or
what
learn
it
to
even
trust
means.
yourself
Yeah,
that wasn't right for them. Like, but I trust my own instincts enough that it'll be right for someone. In a way, I don't know. It's something you've just got to learn.
Right,
Just
but-
like doing it, and then it's
So amazing, isn't it, what
But
we
it's
do?
so I know it's so stupid. It's so stupid.
But if I never made a show again, I'd be completely happy. So that's the different thing. You're talking about the hierarchy
Yes.
of stuff.
Yes.
I'm not, I may never make another show, who knows? And I think that's fine. Or I may
Wow.
not do a whole lot of things. And I don't have any fear about that being a thing.
Why not? What will you be doing if you're not doing another show though? Don't you go like, oh, what else is there?
Yeah.
It'll be, you know, I was talking with you earlier, I'm thinking about writing a book. As I feel for a long time, last couple of decades actually, there's something I've been kind of toying with, and I think that the time has made itself apparent to me, and I think, okay, and it's a very singular thing, writing.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, very different experience.
Yeah.
It's something, I guess it needs to burn away that desire for a while. It's just sort of like burning and heating up inside you, and then when the timing is right.
yeah.
Because it takes a particular kind of energy and a very different energy and focus, doesn't it?
I think so. I'll find out. Maybe I'll be really
Yeah.
bad at it. Who knows?
Good luck.
But
well.
I don't think I've ever identified myself by the things I do. I think that's probably what it is, and I think they're just things I do. I don't think they define who I am. And I think, you know, and I obviously know and love lots of actors and been in relationship with actors, and I feel like that's a bit of a pitfall where you identify so much with the thing that you do.
Yeah.
And the terrible thing about acting is 95% of it, the time you're not doing it.
Yeah.
And so in that equation, it makes 95% of your life completely worthless.
Oh.
And
Yes.
that's an absurdity.
And the
Of course it
95%
isn't.
of like feeling well, I mean the way Ada talks, it's like, well, yeah, they're like that you're unemployed for 95% of the time, and you're like, well, where's the next thing gonna come?
Yeah.
And
But that equation, I mean, on paper, it's just, of course you're not worthless. So
Yeah.
what if,
Yes.
if that's not the answer, what does it mean?
yeah.
So, and I've always said, acting is what you do. It's not who you are. If you think it's who you are, I think just get out of it.
Just sort of a recipe for.
Well, that's so funny because we were talking about like with my other comedian friends and on a couple of the other episodes, kind of like a bit embarrassing that I still say that I just do comedy, not that I am a comedian, because it takes a certain level of it takes a certain level of, I don't know, pride
confidence.
Confidence. Okay.
Self-esteem.
Okay.
Personal hygiene.
Okay. All right. Can see there's a few things I need to work on.
We love you.
Yeah.
We love you.
But it's seen as like this real if you would be at another level if you say you're a comedian, because that implies that you're a professional, you're working, you're doing, well, in Australia it's that you're doing cruise ships or that you're doing these things because it's really hard, obviously, to make any kind of living as a stand-up in Australia. It's not really a very big avenue, so you have to do these other things like, cruise ships
lots of stuff.
travel a lot.
Writing for sketches, traveling, there's lots of things.
So, you kind of seen as well, if you still got a kind of day job, you just do comedy. You're not really I don't know, but you are a comedian. It's just these mind games that we play with ourselves. That it's like
you're conflating the doing of comedy with the making of money, and I think we do that all the time. They're not the same thing, So I think we do conflate those ideas as artists, that you're successful or you're professional if you're able to support yourself doing it. But I think if it's the thing that motivates you, and I suspect for most people who do it professionally, it's not the thing that motivates them, then, what does it even mean to, sure, you've got to survive and do all that stuff, but the doing and the surviving, they're very separate things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess we really hope that they could be the same thing. I really hope that I could create the stuff and have a meaning and find meaning from my work and also provide some kind of living.
Well, there was a lot of meaning in,
I guess it's the
in
hope
Headland.
for that,
well, I think it's the result. I think the
that kind of thing.
I think the support follows the mean. I think if you are authentically pursuing yourself and your life and you operate with integrity and all those things, I think all that stuff is gravitated towards it. I don't think you can try and cultivate it, or maybe you can, I don't know. But
no, certainly.
I think if you do that thing,
I want to be rich and, I want to be a movie star.
That's right.
And then not actually work on being...
Yeah. I think just doing the thing you do well over time, which is the thing I think that's probably the...
But I think there's like a... not to cut you off, but I think definitely in comedy circles there is this feeling that has maybe trickled down from like big American people like Jerry Seinfeld, where you have to treat comedy or the stand-up like a job. You have to go to it as a 9 to 5. That's the only way you get better. You have to sit in front of whatever you are, and you have to write every day and treat it like an actual job, and then only then will you get to the next level. So you have to be so obsessed with it that it
10
becomes
years, right? Isn't there some 10-year thing too?
Yeah. But then how are you if you're treating it like a 9 to 5? Like what? How do you pay?
How do you have another 9 to 5 in your spare pocket? Yeah.
And how do you also like have a mental safe mental health? Because it can be like, really, I think a lot of comedians maybe view it like that too much, and it's this real spin out, and then you're like, you can suck yourself into self-doubt, and you're like, because you are just in a room by yourself and you're like, well, I think this is funny, but I don't really know until I try this out later. But then you've spent
you've got King of Comedy
so much time. Yeah,
which is an amazing film. He literally is in his basement with cutouts.
Yeah.
Well, I think so that phrase for me,
it's hard
treating
to
it as a job is just another word for treating it with structure and rigor. I think the job part is kind of irrelevant, but what the job part gives you is rigor.
Yeah.
And I think we forget as artists require rigor. It's not something, you have to practice. It's called art practice for some reason, for a real reason.
So you mean kind of like
so
teaching yourself
interesting.
discipline or What do you mean by rigor?
Rigor is the practice of the thing that you're pursuing. So for me, I have a practice of being a creative person. It manifests in a variety of different skills, but every day I'm working on thinking about my creative practice and how it reflects on who I am, and I try and work out what motivates me and to be an authentic person and understand my actions and stuff like that. It's all part of my practice.
So then you're just doing it you're just directing everyone, your kids, and like you're just constantly directing.
I've mentioned earlier, I homeschool my kids now, and in terms of jobs, it's the best job I've ever done.
Wow.
The most important thing I've ever done in my life.
Oh my gosh.
But, we're studying Peter Carey's True History of the Kelly Gang at the moment, and we read a chapter and then we just discuss in depth. But invariably, you're talking about creativity, transformation, all those big things about what we do as artists. So, yes, I am kind of doing that all the time. I'm never not thinking about it.
Wow.
But I also want to say I do sound like a wanker as well. Life is, I feel very privileged to be able to do this because I know it's not available
to
everybody.
Yeah.
The caveat for all of this is,
it sounds like you've still worked really hard to get where you are. Like, it's not like you just kind of, like, you're making it seem very lucky. Like, I just kind of fell into it. I just kept doing this and that happened. But, like, obviously you've worked hard.
I haven't felt like working hard other than actively making decisions, making choices about your life. I know I've made active choices about the life that I want.
Yeah.
And they haven't been accidents because you have a sense of where you want to sit, but the working hard, I feel like my life has been incredibly blessed, really. It doesn't feel like hard work.
Wow. Well, I guess that's, that's the aim.
I think that caveat is important, and something I always think about too is like it does come with a lot of privilege, really. A lot of this, a lot of this stuff we're saying, and it doesn't sit well with me. And I was having this like text exchange with Rowan through the week about sounding like a wankery actor, and I think it is really important to just acknowledge there are so many things that we are very blessed. God.
Yeah.
Damn it. That term.
Very lucky.
Damn it. But we are very lucky to have the great privilege of doing what we want with a lot of our time and making these choices.
To have the time.
Yes,
exactly.
We're not
being
like
invaded.
nursing someone, and we're not, we don't have those things to worry about. And so then it means we have these other things to worry about. But it does mean that it gives us the time to really, I guess, put our energy into something that we choose to make our lives feel more meaningful, which we are very lucky to do, even though it does take rigor.
Yeah,
I guess,
and they're not taking
and energy, and not taking them for granted ever. I really despise myself when it sounds like I have taken it for granted because
you just coasted along.
All of it, but all of it is so lucky. I mean, it is so lucky to find such joy.
Yeah.
And to be creating these things that are so that do bring joy to people's lives, and to be sitting on the precipice of being afraid of something and doing it, and not actually being in fear of our own lives. It's just we're in fear of our inner critics. And, to be given the space to explore those things, I do feel incredibly lucky.
And also, you two were actually quite lucky to have we talked about it before. We didn't actually mention the name of being cast in Headland,
our show, the show that had to come
on Channel 7, 9.
Well, we did talk about it when that was the one anyway. That was just too good for this world, and so it got taken off. But Headland.
But I mean, it was like you were probably both in your early, in your like early mid-20s. It would have been the first like major thing that you were in. So you were like really lucky to have like
yes. Well, it was one of my.
I guess this is like an affirming thing that it's like, okay, I could do this.
If we talk about jobs, we don't really talk about careers, because we've got such a small population, and small industry, and we do always certainly taught to feel grateful if we get thrown anything, and we do the crappy television. But if as I say, you operate with integrity inside
time and
anything,
a place. I always think. Yeah, there are some jobs that are just really suit the circumstances at the time, and that give you so much of something else. So. Yeah, I feel like I'm much less judgmental of different avenues that people, or money spinning things, or because it often just takes a lot of diversity in terms of what you do, I think sometimes. And there are different times in our life when we need certain things.
And you can't do it in a vacuum. I mean, acting is it's not like a pursuit you can do on your own in your bedroom, like it's an interpretive, artistic endeavour. So you're interpreting ideas or words or direction or whatever. It requires this thing around you to exist, and those things are hard to put together and they're expensive. So when they do, you want to use them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The privilege of being able to do it is real, certainly in this country, but we're not really taught to think that either, because we're always thinking it's not good enough. We're always complaining.
Yeah.
Actors are always complaining about stuff. But
it's a privilege, I think it's okay to be like, well, kind of critical of the Australian landscape of television. I mean, we were talking about it. It's really not that many jobs as like
it's a small industry.
Very small. So I don't know if it's like a privilege to be here and to work in it. Do you reckon? I mean, it's just like there's not that many opportunities that like I think there could be more opportunities, but there's just not that many. Not a whole lot of funding or money being put into like developing new Australian ideas in that.
That's right, because we get down to this dichotomy about supporting sport or supporting art. Why can't we have both?
Exactly.
They're not in competition with each other.
And we should just be like grateful we've got neighbours,
But I've just come back from North America with one of my shows that we're touring over there, and they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like they've got the same issues, the same complexities, the same conversations. And in some ways, in Australia, we always think we're behind, but in some ways I think...
we're lucky to just be to the side a little bit.
That's interesting because
is going on.
Yeah, I mean North America. Everyone talks about the States as being like, well, you can you make a living out of doing things. There's so many more avenues that you can go down.
And there are because of the numbers, but not because of the thinking, I think.
We've certainly come a long way. I feel like there's further to go.
Way further.
And I certainly feel like there's such pressure on most female characters just to be likable and just to like not cry too much or cry on this bit or cry. There's such analysis of what is acceptable, what is an acceptable level of attraction and
to not be hysterical,
likability and like to not be hysterical. There are certain times when it is very warranted to be hysterical, and often those are the roles that I get cast in. I don't know, but there are those moments where it is fine for a woman to be really out of control and to be and I think that's what I'm really struggling with within our Australian industry. And certainly I think from watching stuff from overseas in America, it's the same. And then also being able to be really vulnerable, so I think it's maybe flipped the other way, and it's very hard for female characters to be vulnerable now without being criticised for being a victim. And so I think like we lose some of all of the complexities that can exist just being woman. Which is like woman in this circumstance, dealing with, whatever it is that character's going through. Can be a whole bunch of different things.
Of course.
And I feel like there's so much analysis over what is acceptable people won't want to watch that because that's too hysterical. It's too loud. Do it a bit quieter and do it a bit without moving your face so much.
I guess just because like comparatively no one's doing that to the male characters.
No, I think that's why
I really
we're talking
feel
about like get off. I really feel like sick of that a little bit because I think there's such sort of nitpicking over like what is an acceptable form of woman. Let the female actors and the writers like bring woman to the table and let them be present.
Be angry, but maybe just give a smile at the end so we know she's not
so we don't hate her. So we don't feel so scared.
But
it's okay to feel scared. Like,
Yeah,
who
that's
cares?
an appropriate
Who cares?
response to someone with a knife.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like
It's interesting. We just did my family. We just did a 3-day music festival up in the Hunter Valley a couple of weeks ago. We got back from it's the second time we've been.
You went as a whole family to a music festival?
Amazing.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
It sounds like a nightmare.
wow.
like in a tent.
Awesome.
And
Yeah. We got
Wow.
like a camper trailer and
Whoa.
we love ourselves
so
sick.
good.
But it's a very kind of family focused one. But I did notice in terms of this conversation is that incredible musicians, incredible artists, but invariably, you know, it's a kind of a folk blues festival. All the blokes
Yeah.
are all singing like flat and out of tune and telling these stories. They're terrible and warmed up, you know.
Yeah.
And then you go to the stage with a female vocalist lead or whatever, and they're astonishing, like, you know,
Yeah.
studio recorded vocals, like
Wow.
unbelievable. And you go,
Like so professional.
Yeah.
you know, to be a woman in this space, you have to be
the best.
exceptional.
Yeah.
To be a bloke, you just have to kind of look okay and grunt
Oh,
a
yeah.
bit. And
So much more forgiving.
yeah,
right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we made the rules, I suppose, and that's,
Yeah.
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
the
because you
terrible
have to try
part of
to
it.
It's
be
also- yeah.
hurt. I mean, I've done gigs. It's not like this is a problem that it's been like, you know, decades ago. I've done gigs where like there's been people in the audience that whenever a female gets on, they'll like cover their ears, like literally,
Like as
the
a joke?
physical act.
As a joke,
No.
like, oh no, a woman's
No.
coming to the stage.
It's just because no woman has made me laugh before. Literally, like deadpan,
really?
they'll just be like,
When
I don't
of
think women are
comedians,
funny.
I can-
So they're the kind of people that you're looking
you're in
at
the wrong
and you're
place, like, you're in a comedy
okay, I
club.
guess you have to be kind of exceptional. Sometimes it's like so much pressure being the one woman on a lineup. I do it all the time. I'm the only woman like with 8 dudes. And so if you're just having an off night or you're trying new material that isn't very good yet, but if it doesn't go well,
pressure.
it feels like, well, they're going to think that, well what
women
was
are
that
like that.
what was that woman comedian doing? And you're like, well, you're just trying to do the same thing that all these other people are doing. But it was just like a bad night. You don't have the ability to be human. You're just like, okay, I've got to nail it for the sake of all womankind. So that guy doesn't go
so
to another
absurd.
show being like, nah, I've never thought a woman is funny, because he's probably only seen this one show with one woman and she didn't nail it.
And so you've got that voice going on as you're doing it. You're aware of that.
Oh
pressure when
yeah,
you're doing
all the
it?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess all the time.
Joke about the period.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, that's so funny because I
Rosie has
did
all
have
this
a
excellent material about periods.
but it is such a thing of like the men going to them. It's like it's their worst nightmare. It's like, oh no, I knew she would do this. Women just freaking cannot shut up about their bloody periods. You just go on and on and on.
Can't believe,
Because it is so funny. Like it, yeah. Because it's funny that that's what they expect us to talk about, and most women don't. Like it's absolutely like, yeah. It's
It's sort of priceless.
anyway.
The synchronicity of those moments is like couldn't have been planned any better.
Oh yeah, it often gets a bigger laugh, like I've found when I point it out, because I'm like maybe like in the farming world as well. Like I'm pretty comfortable in male dominated industries, and so I don't really care, and I'll point them out. And these guys, like, you know, will have their crossed arms and like staring at me and like refusing to
hands on their
laugh.
ears.
Yeah, and it's just funny to even point that out. That you realize like, yeah, what you're doing, like, you know.
He's not really loving this show.
Yeah. And you can point it out and just have a conversation with him, and then you can kind of either like really get into him and like make fun of him. Yeah, you can kind of do it, because it's like, well, you guys talk about your stuff all the time. Like
You
every
just have
guy
to deal
on
with it all
lineup
the
does
time,
it.
don't you? In little bits all
We're
the time.
always
Yeah.
talking about our periods.
Yeah, I know. We'll not shut up
Always,
about it.
yeah.
Always on the rag. Well, yeah. But there is something like, so I think I'm really lucky in that I have that balance, and I feel like I'm a little bit like, I don't know, like I think it's helped my comedy, not just in material, but also just being a little bit more even in that, well, I'm not, I don't know, like I'm not just obsessing over this thing. It's not the the be all and end all. If I crush this, like it's okay, kind of thing. Like,
But
I
I even think the word balance is kind of. We talked about this podcast. How do you juggle all the things? And I think that's just the word juggling. Even is, it might seem like semantics, but the exciting thing about juggling is the potential to drop it. Why are we basing our lives on someone who's
about to drop
something?
Yeah.
Leave that to jugglers. Like we're not doing. Like jugglers are doing one thing. They're juggling.
But we could
really
fail.
Well. Yeah. The idea that we've got all these separate things in the air and that if you pursue one, the other one will fall down, I think is invented. It's not real. We should maybe think more about our lives as people who do a lot of things really well, like producers. Why can't we think, producers are defined, their success is defined by delivering a project where all the things have been done. Let's not define it by someone who's potentially going to drop something. I think even the language around it doesn't really work.
You're so
for
right.
Me. Yes. So when you talk about you doing your other job, all I'm hearing is you're existing as a human being in the world.
Yeah.
You're experiencing it in these fundamentally different ways, sometimes on stage with people, sometimes in the country with animals or whatever. But it's just one thing. It's just one life. Sometimes they intersect in different ways. That's useful and interesting and give you an interesting life. But you just got one life. You're not doing a million things. I mean, it's really where we started. And I don't think of my life as a life of juggling things. Everything is integrated. I feel like I've got one shot at it.
It's a chore to do any one thing. It's all like, well, this is all stuff.
It's not even a chore. It's just no difference. Homeschooling my kids feels the same as making a play, feels the same as writing a book, feels the same as having a relationship, feels the same. There's no different. They're just in different places, but you're not a different person when you're doing them, and you can't possibly be. So I think, and maybe it's a trick to just quell my own mind and make me feel like, I'm just having a very simple life. But I don't think that I change when I'm doing any of these different pursuits. They're just things I've learnt. And, I get bored, so I learn another thing. And, who's to say you're going to do comedy all your life? Who's to say I'm going to do anything? Just have a good life.
Exactly.
But again, we're very privileged in this country to do that we can even sit around here and even talk about it. Some people can't do that. And I think if we have that privilege, we should honour it and do it really well, and
not take it for granted.
That's right, and do it with kindness. And, when I'm teaching the boys at home, the most amazing thing I see in them isn't the things they're learning, and they're learning lots of beautiful, incredible things, but their kindness, and their respect. They feel like housemates. I don't feel like my children, the things that we do, all those things that happen in the gaps between the things we do.
Yes.
That
They're
I
often
get
the
to
most
see.
important thing.
Yeah, and I get to, the kids for 13 years, and then the adults for the rest of their life. I get to be in their lives while they're at this stage that they'll never be again. It is the most incredible thing I've ever done. And, if we're talking about juggling jobs, that's my top job.
Yeah.
Everything is incidental to that.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think that way of thinking has enabled me to have an incredibly rich creative life, and wonderful opportunities, all sorts of stuff. But it's never been the thing that I've been pursuing, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Joel.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for coming and talking to us, and for being so kind of candid and open with.
So that's that critical eye. I don't know what I've said.
Critical eye.
Yeah.
You've erased it all.
It's going to be,
Gosh.
No, it's been great.
No.
Thank you. Okay.
What I do want to plug is I want to just say that I'm so privileged to live and work and be creative and grow food on Bunurong country down in the peninsula, and that is probably the most beautiful place I could possibly imagine in the world.
Yeah.
So I feel like I want to acknowledge that too.
Oh, well, thank you.
Joel.
Thanks for that's
Beautiful words.
That's it. We did it.
That's it. Now we'll mangle
Another
it all up.
episode. Yeah.
Bring someone on to say some really beautiful words. And
as we end every
mangle them all up.
episode,
thank you.
Wow. You really can't tell. You failed improv. Comes so naturally.
See you next time.
Yay!
Hey. Thank you for listening. If you liked us, please tell a friend or two. Apparently that's how these things work. We want to acknowledge the incredible stories, culture, resilience and creativity of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, in particular the beautiful lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, where this podcast is recorded. Thank you also to Chris Pickering for the music and Vincent Pickering for the logo and animations. And yes, they are our brothers. We're everywhere. Should we talk to each other first? Oh,
Sure.
I think I brought the script. I printed it out. Stop. The script that I don't like to do.
You're obsessed with scripts. I don't understand.
We're talking about pharmacy scripts, yeah?
Yeah. Antipsychotics.
Very important for some people.